Okay. All right. We're going to let everybody take a moment to log in. We have a few people logged in already. We'll give it just a minute before we get started. All right. Excellent. Okay. Looks like we've got quite a crowd this morning. I'm excited to see everybody here. It's nice and snowy here in Colorado, so we're in our nice warm offices. I'm not sure how it is for all of you guys. I know Dave's under, he said 16 inches of snow or something like that up in Utah. We've just got a couple inches here, but nice icy roads. So I'm glad to be inside doing this with you guys today. All right, we've got a bunch of people already logged in. Gordon, just so you know, Dave already asked me to call you out, so be prepared for a question later on. All right, good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a great day. We are excited to have you here on this Wednesday for our webinar Wednesday. Dave Burleigh is our presenter today. He will be talking about the recession reset, getting rid of the excess. So today, I want to let you know we are recording this. You can come back and revisit. We are taking questions throughout this program. Normally, we reserve questions to the end. Dave is going to kick this off with a 10-minute presentation just to kind of get the information out there so we have a good topic to cover. And we encourage you to ask questions throughout the entire presentation. We will reserve the questions for when he's done presenting, and then we'll go into a Q&A session. So please feel free to ask questions, as many as you have. We have about an hour today. And if you have any questions regarding the format or you're having any technical difficulties, you can reach me through the chat function. So the questions are in the Q&A speech bubbles. There's 2 speech bubbles at the bottom of your screen. You click on that, and that's where you're going to ask your questions for the presenter. And if you click on the chat function, you can communicate just with me to make sure that I answer any questions you have about the format or any technical difficulties you are having. All right, with that, I'm going to pass this over to Dave to kick off our presentation today. I'm really excited about this new format.
Perfect. Thanks, Emma Jane. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So quickly to start, I just want to introduce myself for those of you that haven't sat through one of my webinars before. My name is Dave Burleigh. I'm based out of Salt Lake City, Utah. And I have my background is in directing purchasing departments for regional and national builders across the country. Specifically, I like to focus on unitized pricing. So that's really what I'm passionate about, is how can we most efficiently buy and build the homes, as well as how can we reduce as much waste as possible. With me today is Emma Jane, who is just speaking. She has some really cool job titles. I like to just simplify it and say Emma Jane really is responsible for herding all the cats on the consulting team and making sure that we're in line, on time, and doing everything we can to help you guys out. So as we start today, I want to look at kind of a comparison between 2006 and 2022. Our last big downturn, depending on what market you were in, came sometime between late 06 as late as into about 2009 is when the last markets were hit. If we look at 2006, our average sales price at the peak across the country was $329,000, compared to the average sales price at the peak of this last bubble that we just went through was $564,900. So a significant increase in the price of the home. In 06, for the most part, schedules stayed on track. We are able to stay very aggressive, continue to build in very normal build times. Versus 2022, we saw many schedules double or even worse than double from their original plan. We didn't have any significant supply chain constraints in 2006, versus you're all aware that in 2022, there were very significant restraints. We did have consistent and predictable margins back in 06, versus reports of a lot of inconsistent margins in 2022. And really today, a lot of what we're going to focus on is that in 06, the common practice is that we built a base house plus our options with very few amenities or included features. However, by 2022, we built base house with a ton of included features, a ton of upgrades that were included in the home. And we really want to kind of hone in on that section. So what changed between '06 and 2022? Obviously, the pandemic is a part of it. As the pandemic raged on, we had issues with supply chain. We had issues with manufacturing facilities being shut down or reduced. We had fuel costs into the equation. There were a lot of variables that hit us at that one time that did really cause us to have some issues controlling our costs. We also had the skyrocketing mortgage rates that in many markets have now priced buyers out of the market. It's a simple mathematical equation that if our buyers can't afford to buy our homes, they're not going to buy our homes. But we also need to really understand that the inclusion of amenities also affected our cost. It's not just the cost increases that we saw because of the pandemic. We also helped create this problem ourselves by starting to include all these included features, which one cost us more, two, then to our buyer, it cost the buyer more. And it also significantly changed our cycle times because our homes were getting larger with a lot more included features in there. So we want to look at what's the true cost of these amenities or included features. The first is obviously the amenity has a direct construction cost itself. We have to pay to have that amenity, both for material and labor. But we also need to look at that sheer volume of amenities created longer cycle times. And we all know that for every day that we added to our cycle time, we increased the cost of our home. So we ended up having to pay twice now for those amenities. The third thing we want to look at is what were our opportunity costs. So as we started giving away all these included features and just putting them into our base homes, were we taking the options off of the table and therefore not being able to generate as much option revenue, which would impact our profits as well. And then the fourth part is what we're all experiencing today is our true base cost has become very muddy with all of these amenities. We no longer know what's the actual cost of our true base house, our stripped down, off the shelf house without all these inclusions. And as we're looking today for value engineering ideas, and we're looking to renegotiate with our trade partners, we really first have to realign to what is that true base house without all of these inclusions. So when I'm talking about these inclusions or amenities, there's a couple of them that stand out. The first one that we often talk about when I'm meeting with clients is covered patios. We see covered patios as included on homes across the country now. But we need to understand that covered patios are actually a very high take rate option. If we add that as an option or have it available as an option, people do purchase covered patios. So we don't want to assume that the buyer wants that covered patio unless they actually tell us they want one and they're willing to purchase it as an option. We also want to look at our exterior details. For those of you that were in the market in '06, if you think what it looked like when you drive through a neighborhood, we weren't heavy on corbels and dormers and a ton of stone and all these nice accent details that we're doing on our homes. We really want to revisit those and make sure that we're not burdening our costs with all these extra details. In a lot of cases, these details can be made options. The dormer could be an option. I have quite a few builders that I work with that we do enhanced elevations so that you pick that elevation B, but then you can add an optional enhancement that adds the corbels, the shutters, all these extra details that we've added in without really thinking about the impact of the cost of adding those. We also want to look at the sides and rear. So this is my favorite thing when I go on a product walk, is to walk to the back of the home and simply ask how many people have bought your house based on the way that it looked from the backyard. And the answer is generally 0. But yet we spend a lot of money in the back of our homes. We're putting in hips, we're putting in all these extra details on the sides and rear of the home that don't actually sell the home. We all know that we're selling the home from curb appeal, not from fence appeal. So we need to revisit those things. And then the last one I want to quickly touch on today is the abundant light issue. So over time, we've started adding more and more windows into our base houses, which is a disservice to us from a cost standpoint. It's also a disservice from an option standpoint. Historically, windows are a very high take rate option. To do these high glass windows or transom windows, there's a lot of good options we could have there that over the past few years have crept from options into being part of our base home, which just continues to compound the cost of our home, the availability of getting windows, how long it's taking to get these windows installed. It's a snowball effect when we give all these inclusions away. So I'm going to quote Chuck, who's actually on the call with us today. Chuck often says, don't spend your buyers' money before you've ever even met them. I think this is key, and this is what we have been doing, at least for the past few years, is we're deciding what our buyer wants without really even asking them, do you want that? I think a key here is it's not only do you want it, it's can you afford it? We have to have both of those questions asked and answered to know, is this an inclusion that my buyers actually want? And is this an inclusion that my buyer can actually afford? Because if the answer to either one of those is no, then it needs to be moved out of our base house and become a true option, so that only those buyers that do want it and can afford to have that in their mortgage payment select those options. So again, like Emma Jane said in the beginning, this is our new format. It's a quick kind of down and dirty. Let's give you a basic principle, because we actually want to spend most of this time you guys answering your questions and really digging into the topic in the way that's going to best serve you guys.
All right. Well, we already have a couple of questions up. So I have from Tracy. She says her homes became more amenity heavy as we weren't selling homes until a later stage due to cost fluctuations. If these amenities weren't added up front, they weren't able to be added later. What is your recommendation on which features to add in this type of model?
Yeah, so we really want to look at the same question we asked before, is which amenities do we really think are helping sell those homes, especially in the situation that she's describing. And then two is, which features are we adding that as that price fluctuates because of that inclusion, that it's not pricing our buyers out of the market? I think, and Chuck, please chime in, because I know you know this answer probably down to the penny. But over the past year with interest rates, mortgage payments have jumped almost or right around $1,000 on the monthly payment, which is a significant impact to the buyers. So as we continue to add these inclusions, we're going to continue to see that $1,000 creep even higher. And then oftentimes I live in Salt Lake, where the vast majority of our population is now priced out of the market and can no longer buy new homes.
Yeah, for a $450,000 mortgage, you're talking $800 to $1,000, depending on whether or not we're at 6.5% or 7%
Yep.
mortgage today. That's a huge increase.
I think it's also important that in a situation that was just described, I can have these inclusions, but have them as options still. So if I felt like to continue to move product in this community, I need to include a walk-in shower and an enhanced front porch. That's great, but I want to actually add those as options. I can always discount those options if I need to be able to meet the demands of what I need to hit my pricing. But if I'm still treating them as options, it's still allowing me to see the true cost impact. What is my actual base house? What were these things that I decided to include in order to be able to continue to sell homes?
The other thing that you can do is, if you have a high take rate of one of these things that we take out, you can put the rough-in in the house to make it much easier to sell these as options after. So if you're doing specs or you're doing townhouses, let's say you're doing townhouses and you have an option of a fireplace, go ahead and put the flue in. And then you don't have to tear the whole house apart or that center unit apart to get the fireplace in. It's just a very easy thing to put into the unit.
Excellent. Are you ready for the next question?
Yes.
This is from our friend Connor in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania. Hi, Connor. We're glad you're here with us today. He wants to know, when you think of the 55 plus communities, what features stick out in a base house that don't need to be there? For example, medicine cabinets or something like that.
So I'm going to start with medicine cabinets. And I apologize to anyone up front if you just absolutely love medicine cabinets. I thought medicine cabinets died back in the 90s with the brick phone. It's one that we've seen across the country. We've been able to pull those out, generally with a lot of fear that medicine cabinets are something we have to have. Our buyers want them, our buyers expect them. And then they don't even really notice that we got rid of them. Medicine cabinets are not a cheap thing to add. It's not just the cabinet, there's extra lumber involved. It's a more time-consuming process to get that in. In general, Connor, I apologize. I don't know the 55 plus market all that well. But I'd certainly love the opportunity next time we're together to take a look at some of your inclusions and see if we can brainstorm some ideas of the things that maybe we should consider trying to eliminate. As well as I know you're really actively trying to find those next things, that next generation of inclusions and options that the newer 55 plus are really after.
Excellent. I hope that answers your question, Connor. Feel free to expand on your question. He said, sounds like a plan. We'll touch base later. All right. So Myrna has a question. They've been debating whether to include tile showers or tub shower units in their homes. We build starter homes and first-time move-up homes. How do you decide whether to include?
Yeah, so right out of the gate, I always think tile should be an option. Tile's very expensive. It's very labor intensive as well, and definitely can alter your cycle times. In my past worlds, I've often found that I could kind of go in between. And depending on the marketplace, if you can get cultured marble readily available, it's not a huge jump from the fiberglass stall to the cultured marble, which still gives a cleaner, more polished look. But I always try to stay away from the tile, because I found that if you do just a typical 4x12 white subway tile as your included tile, you're going to have way too many buyers that actually like that. That was the look they're going for. So you're taking your option availability off the table right out of the gate. There's even cultured marbles now that look like subway tile. That's a very small jump from regular cultured marble to get the look and feel of tile, but not actually be tile, so that we can still have that availability out there. And I think beyond just the cost of the material itself, we also need to take into account, in the case of fiberglass surrounds, is what does your warranty look like on those? That varies a lot market to market. I'm in Utah, where it doesn't seem like anyone can install a fiberglass wall set correctly. So you get a lot of leaks. You wind up potentially with mold issues. And it's one of those areas where we stayed away from it, mainly because I could go to something as an alternative and eliminate my warranty concerns in the process. And that goes for anything you're considering doing, is we need to look at the total cost, not just the cost of the material and labor, cost of cycle time, cost of callbacks, cost of warranty. Really need to dig into those things. But I certainly, directly for that question, would say I always advocate for, let's try to find an alternative to tile and make tile the option.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, Gordon did come up with a question for you. Thank you, Gordon. Morning all. If we make more standard amenities optionals, where do you draw the line? What's the balance of what is included and the admin costs associated with administrating change orders, et cetera?
Yep. So there's a couple of things to look at there. First is if we build our options correctly in our system, we don't have a lot of admin time long-term to manage those options. Two is, and again, I understand this can vary market to market, but we all need to be better at understanding that change orders are the death of our processes, and we should try to eliminate change orders as much as possible. I can have a really robust option library, but if I'm setting my processes, I don't release a home until all of my design center selections are done, then I'm eliminating the concern of change orders, but I'm still giving that robust catalog of option availability to my customer. It really, I know Gordon's product, and he's definitely at the higher end of the spectrum. So Gordon, yours is probably a little bit different. You could not get away with building what I consider to be a base house because your buyers would not respond to that, or not at least respond in a positive manner to that. But I'm sure there are areas where you can say, hey, let's tail this back a little bit. Let's remove some of these inclusions. And as long as you're following that up with the process to say, you have to pick all of your sales options and finalize them. You have to pick all your designer options and finalize them. And then we will actually release purchase orders and start the home. Then you're going to eliminate the concern over change orders.
All right. And Gordon, if you have any follow-up questions to that answer, feel free to add that on there. All right. Robert has a question. What do you think about fireplaces in smaller starter homes where the wall space is limited and buyers need the huge TV?
So I've had that same experience. And we only offered fireplaces as options. We never included a fireplace. And again, as a caveat, I live in Salt Lake City, which is a very cold climate during the winter months, but we are able to say we don't have to include fireplaces. And we ultimately, over time, switched most of our fireplaces over to the electric fireplaces so that they're more conducive with TVs. They take less space. They put off less heat so we can get the TV closer to the flame, or not flame, the light that pretends to be a flame. But I would definitely suggest the first is to decide, do you need the fireplace as an inclusion? And I would lean towards no. And then as an option, I would definitely consider looking at the electrics that have a much smaller footprint, easier to install, less expensive, better for your homeowner long-term because there's less cost of maintenance and running it for them. As well as you're giving them that comfort that they can still get their monster TV, which I totally support. It's a living room. It should be the biggest TV you can possibly fit on that wall.
There's no personal preference in that question. Thank you, Robert. If you have additional questions, please feel free to submit your question if you have follow-up questions to that. Myrna, if you remember, they build a starter home. She wants to know if you have a good script when talking with a buyer who complains that everything is an upgrade.
Yeah, I think it's similar. I learned this when I was going to buy cars, and I would make that same complaint, that I would look at the sticker and go, wow, that's a $15,000 car, but by the time I got power windows and AC and everything else, it was a $30,000 car. Is being able to explain to them that your goal is to be able to get them in their first home. We all support the dream of home ownership, but to do that, we have to be realistic. So we start with a home that we believe that everybody could afford as that entry level, and then we're allowing you to decide. Again, it's hitting both points of we're letting you choose what you want in the home, but we're also letting you choose what you believe you can afford to pay for on a monthly basis.
Excellent. And then she also says, a follow-up to that question is option 2 zone HVAC for 2-story homes? Question mark.
Yep. So here in Utah, zoned AC is very common for first and second floors plus basements. We have the triple whammy. We typically have offered the zoning as an option, usually at a little bit lower margin. So if my HVAC is usually going to be a 35%, I might discount that down to 25 to 30 to try to attract buyers to select that option. But it's also an easy one that a well-trained sales team can explain why that is a beneficial option, and how it's an option that, and what it increases your monthly payment. You're actually going to be able to offset that cost by having more efficient heating and cooling.
Excellent. Thank you, Myrna, for your question. I hope that helped you navigate that topic. I have a couple other questions here, and we'll see if that stimulates more questions from the crowd. But what about inclusions that the municipality or HOA require? How do you deal with those?
Yeah, so we've seen that a lot over probably about the past 5 to 7 years. A lot of cities have gotten really out of hand, and said you have to have a ton of stone, you have to have hardy, you have to have all these exterior features. In a market like this, there's no reason to not have that conversation back with the city. And a lot of times it's the people making those choices don't understand the cost implication of those choices. And through your HBA and through going to council meetings is a good way to broach that subject and make sure you're pointing out that, yes, it's a beautiful looking home, but all this stone and all these features are costing me, let's say $10,000 more. That means that I'm asking people wanting to move into your community to pay $20,000 more just to meet your requirements. And we've seen Texas especially, has actually passed laws to protect this stuff now, because they understood that those city requirements, municipal requirements, even HOA requirements were exponentially raising the cost of the home, which was pricing buyers out of the market. You're not necessarily going to get the answer that you want, but you need to, I think it's important to bring that to that municipality's attention. But you have to do it with facts and data. You have to be able to show them what is the cost implication to you, what's the cost implication to the buyer, even to show them what that changes in a monthly payment helps, to really drive home that the municipality is hurting themselves at this point by helping you make buyers be priced out.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. Thank you, Dave. And the whole point of this conversation is to talk about how do we're talking about monthly payments, honestly, when we're talking about our buyers and making sure that they can still afford to buy our homes. And we have a question here. If all my competitors included a covered patio, wouldn't I be at a disadvantage for not including it? So what is the implications of making decisions on your product based on what your competitors are doing?
Yep. So what we need to look at in a covered patio, a cheap covered patio, we're probably about $12,000 at least. And those can creep well into the upper 20s, depending on the size of the patio. Is if I can remove that patio and also remove or lower my price in accordance, then the way I'm going to overcome not having the covered patio is I'm now significantly cheaper on my base house price than my competitors. And I would personally, I would spin that into explaining to them, we didn't know if you wanted a covered patio, so we didn't include a covered patio. If you want one, we have them. They're available. It's a great option. This is what it is to add it. But we have to be prepared to be able to explain to our buyers how we decided not to make their decisions for them. We decided to give them the most competitive base house price and then allow them to decide what was important to them. But if we just remove the covered patio and don't lower our price and we're still matching our competitor's price without the covered patio, then yes, we have a much bigger obstacle to overcome.
Right. Thank you. Here's another one. What if your trade partners will give you a lower price when you include an option? Should you take advantage of that? And what is the implication on your pricing and on your business?
Yep. So I've seen this a lot. I've been guilty of it myself in the past. Is I see that they're willing to give me that next upgrade of a faucet, for example, at a screaming deal. It's much cheaper than I would get it as an option. I really need to step back though and still remember that I'm taking an option off the table when I do that. I'm still increasing the price or the cost of my home, which means I'm increasing the price of my home. And the reality is when I get into my options, I'm not as worried about the cost anymore. I need it to be a reasonable cost, but it doesn't have to be spectacular. And the way that I generally look at that is, what would it cost the buyer to do this after they close? And a faucet's a great example. We all know that we can go to Home Depot today and buy one of probably 300 faucets that they carry in there. So it seems like that's something that the buyer would probably just handle on their own, but we all also know that's not reality. Most of us, I included, I don't want to climb under my cabinet and replace a faucet. So I'm willing to pay a little bit more for the faucet I want up front, as well as be able to pay for that faucet over 30 years instead of having to go drop the money all at one time. So unless, and we also then, if you see a significant jump in what they'll give it to you as an inclusion versus an option, is we need to have that open transparency with the trade partner to find out why that is. Why are they willing to give us a loss leader if we put it in base, but then not give us a reasonable price in the option? We need to dig into that and understand. And there may be a logical reason where that first upgrade is actually something they can get easier. It's more readily available to them. Maybe it installs better, or they think there's not as many warranty issues on it. Then those are all discussions that need to be had to determine maybe in this case, that is a faucet we should include in the base house because its long-term cost is actually cheaper than the lower priced alternative.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. We have a question from Barbara. She's an Alaska builder. She would like to know, would you still strip fireplaces out of a more expensive home, in your opinion, in Alaska? A big argument for keeping them here is that the gas fireplace still works when the power goes out. I would think by protecting the home from extreme temps, this is worth the cost. Thoughts? We pulled baluster railings instead, but always looking at cost reduction.
So I've been to Alaska one time for I think 12 hours. And I wish there would have been a fireplace in my car during that trip. You're definitely in a unique market where that makes sense to me. That's the same. I'll use Utah again as the example. Most Utah builders use gas stoves for that same reason. So that in the event that the power goes out, we can still get some sort of heat source to the home. But you also probably want to look at those fireplace offerings that you have and see if you could find a more competitively priced included fireplace and then still have options to get into the nicer, fancier fireplaces.
Yeah, and I like how she's looking at what are the different options, because she took out the baluster railing instead, but in kind of evaluating what are the things that we can remove from our product line that still makes it attractive and appropriate for our buyer. A lot of these decisions that Dave is talking about today, it's hard to say fireplaces across the board to take them out, because each home, each market you guys are building in is different with different buyers. We have Connor, who's working with 55 plus. We have Myrna, who's working with starter homes, and we have Barbara here in Alaska. So each one of the decisions you make on the homes that you're building is going to be different based on your market and your location, and who your buyer is.
In a case like that, Barbara, if you took the cost of that fireplace, you're already leaning towards that's not the right move, is to remove that fireplace. But if you know the cost of that fireplace, then you can go suggest the alternatives instead. We want to keep the fireplace because we feel like that's really important in our market. I'm spending $8,000 all in on it. Where can I find that $8,000 in other areas? And I find especially, and I'm surprised the question hasn't come up about it, especially when we're talking to our salespeople, is to be able to explain those to them. Because obviously the knee-jerk reaction from most salespeople is you can't remove anything from the house. So we need to be able to show them also how we're trying to lower the sales prices of our homes by lowering our cost, and then presenting those options to them. We can either remove the fireplace, or for the same amount of money, I can downsize my baseboard. I can change to a simpler door panel. I can do X, Y, and Z to equal that same amount of savings, and put some of that power into their hands to say which one is more important to you. What's important to us as a business is to reduce that cost. But as salespeople on the front line, I'm giving you these 3 options that achieve that goal. Which one do you think is most important to stay in the home?
Absolutely. So there's definitely a partnership needed here between your salespeople and making these decisions, right? Would you say
Correct.
that what does the relationship look like? How do you communicate with your salespeople when you are, or your sales team and sales and marketing team when you are looking at taking amenities out of the home? How do you go through that conversation?
Yeah, so the way I've always done it is, one, I want to have alternatives. So if I'm going to set my goal is to reduce $10,000 from this home, I'm going to come up with multiple streams that I can hit that, so that I can present them with multiple opportunities of what avenues we can do that. We also have to make sure that they understand the why behind it. And unfortunately, a lot of times when we get into those meetings, the why is always because we have to reduce cost. That's true, but really the why is we're trying to make the home more affordable for your buyers. We're noticing that sales pace is slipping. We're trying to keep you just as busy and hit that same pace, but we've identified to do that, we need to have a lower cost home. And I think that's a step that, in not just this discussion, in many discussions, we always forget about the why portion of it. And if we're not answering the why, no one's going to give us the buy-in that we're looking for. So we need to be able to accurately describe the why, which the why is a benefit for them. The salesperson doesn't want to sit in an office and not sell homes. Their whole purpose in life at this point is to sell these homes, and you're trying to help them do that. So I think giving them the why and making them at least feel like they're a part of the decision process. I'm not telling you I'm removing the fireplace. I'm telling you the fireplace is one of my opportunities on the table, but I also have these ones. And getting that buy-in and getting their feedback into that loop, so that they're more comfortable when it's time for them to explain to a potential homeowner why you don't include balusters, you went to a half wall. They're equipped with the ability to explain the why that happened, and even say, but they wanted to take the fireplace, but I fought for the fireplace. You still get that. Now you just don't get balusters on your railing.
Mhm. Exactly. And when you talk about the why, it's really important for when you're discussing with your salespeople and they're fighting for a particular amenity to ask that question, well, why? And we always talk about asking the why question 5 times. Why do we need to keep that? What is the benefit for the buyer? What is the benefit for selling the home? And so it's really important to make sure you're diving into those decisions when you're looking at that. If there are any inclusions that we may need to remove in the future, but not today, is there a way to plan for that possibility?
There is. So in Barbara's example, so we don't want to remove the fireplace today, but we know that may still have to be a potential in the future. I would now change that fireplace over to an option, but do it as a $0 included option. So that if at any point we decided that's the last straw, we have to get rid of this thing, then all I have to do is now assign a retail price to that fireplace, and it's ready to go. And I look at that across the board. Anything that I include, I always include it as an option. so that I have that flexibility to make those changes on the fly. It also helps then if you have a bunch of specs sitting, then now those specs are sitting with options on them, not with inclusions on them. So it makes it easier to explain why that spec looks different. Is that spec had the optional covered patio, or that spec had the optional enhanced elevation, rather than say, well, we changed, we don't do that stuff anymore, this is now what you get. It's a lot easier to explain those things, as these are options that were put into that home.
Excellent. What kind of base house savings are you seeing when a builder goes through the process of taking out some of the excess?
Yeah, so the most recent one we did exceeded expectations. Usually we're thinking we're going to see somewhere between about 5 to 12%. And that really depends on where did you start at. If you were a production builder and you just got a little out of hand with inclusions, we're going to be at that low end. But if you're the production builder that really went crazy and took every Pinterest board and turned it into an inclusion in your house, then you're going to be on the high end. But generally, the last one we did ended up being about 13% was our total savings just on removing the inclusions. And for that particular customer, they had 0 sales for way too long. And we went and addressed those inclusions, which allowed them to lower their sales price. And we've had, I believe, 7 sales in the last 9 or 10 days, just from going through that process.
So you were able to reduce the price, reduce the cost first, which led to a reduction in price, which led to an increase in velocity.
Increase in velocity, and I was actually looking at their start orders today. Most of the inclusions we removed were purchased as options.
So it was just a matter of getting people to get involved in the process of building their home. Anyway.
Bring them in the door with the lower price, and then let them get the house the way they want it.
Exactly. This is a fun one for you, and I know you and Ed talk about this kind of stuff all the time. This is from Myrna again. Are there structural or floor plan changes that you have seen that builders are needing to look at now?
Yes. Across the board, there absolutely are. What we found is we got, for lack of any better word, we got a little lazy about looking at how things were designed. Because we're just trying to get everything out the door. We're trying to get new product out. We're getting new sales. We are just cranking through the last couple of years, and weren't necessarily looking with a fine eye at the details of how this house is constructed. I have never, I have not looked at a plan in the past couple of years that we haven't been able to identify design changes that needed to happen. In some cases, they're big changes. It's the home is too big. You design this really cool looking home, but the reality is you need to get some square footage out of it to be able to compete in your market. Typically what we're seeing is more simplified issues of not stacking plumbing, which has a cost to it. We're seeing, I don't know where the idea came that rooms should be 12 foot 3 inches wide. I see those all the time, 12 foot 3 inches. I'm going to look at something like that and say, well, I know that carpet, I only have 11 feet 10 inches of usable carpet in a roll. So why would I design a room that I'm automatically requiring all this waste in my carpet? And a lot of it is taking it to that macro level. It's looking at your window placements. Why did I place a window here where then it required me to put in additional studs? If I would have moved the window a couple inches to the left or a couple inches to the right, I wouldn't have had additional studs. It's revisiting cantilevers. It's revisiting vaulted ceilings have become a major cost implication again. There's definitely a lot of ways to do that. And it's one that it's not just you as a builder, it's your engineer needs to be involved because they may have some ideas of how a minor change could have impacted your engineering in a significant manner. At this point, I say nothing is off the table. You really have to look at every single room by room, and re-examine where is there waste in the construction of this room. Where did I overcomplicate something, so I made it more difficult to build? Did I have to add any beams or any posts or anything that could have been avoided with minor tweaks? It really is a process that you have to go literally room by room through the entire house to find where those opportunities are. You'll ultimately find that the savings you can get on your inclusions match up pretty close in percentage wise. It's about 8 to 12% is what we're seeing, just by attacking the structure and the waste in the structure right out of the gate.
Well, and just to tag on that a little bit, over the last couple of years, particularly, we've had to trade things out because things weren't available due to supply chain issues. Have you seen that some of those trade ups kind of stayed instead of going back down to the level that was originally in the homes, so that builders are adding nicer amenities than they were prior to the supply chain issues, and now the costs are increased based on the new products that they're keeping in their homes?
Yep, without a doubt. We've seen a lot of that where as engineered products became hard to get a hold of in a lot of markets, a lot of people went back to dimensional and found that dimensional actually works for them, and they're able to continue to have that impact. We also see that a lot with the fit and finish stuff, where some of the more entry level products were being hoarded up by the big national players. We should revisit those now, because the nationals are slowing down, and this is a good time to step back in and say, I want to go back to these more basic inclusions instead.
Dave, included in that is, since over the last 10 years, we've upgraded the level of our carpet, of our tiles, and so forth. So this is hidden costs that people don't pay any attention to. Go back to the selections and say, I'm going back to my standard as number one, as opposed to number three, because I basically moved up a couple of grades because my sales price has been increasing.
Yep. Absolutely. There's I talked to someone the other day that didn't realize vinyl flooring still existed, because they abandoned it and went to LVPs and other options. And they're really trying to hone in the price again. And we suggested vinyl, and the answer was, we didn't think you could even get that anymore. It still exists. Formica countertops still exist.
And some
marble countertops still exist. There's a lot of these things that we abandoned that we did really well for a long time. We got out of some of those products, and it's certainly time to look and understand that a lot of those products are very readily available and rather cost effective right now, because no one's using them. So there's an excess of some of this material out there that you can get good deals on if you're willing to make those steps back. And I would say for those of you that have been in the industry for a while, vinyl, Formica, cultured marble tops, all that stuff was absolutely normal. Even coming out of the last recession, that was still what we were all doing. Part of it is having the bravery to stand up and say, I'm going to be the one that's going to return to some of these things. But again, you're doing so knowing that you're giving your buyer a much better cost benefit by returning to some of these basic products that have kind of fallen off over the past few years.
Excellent. We have just a couple more minutes left in this time. Does anybody else have any other questions for Dave? He's a wealth of knowledge. This is his favorite topic. Dave, do you have any other thoughts that you are dying to share with everybody that you're like, nobody asked this question, and I feel like it's definitely something we should address before we finish up today?
I don't have any of those. I do think it's very important that if you, from hearing the questions, some of you have definitely already started thinking about this, which is great. If you haven't already started thinking about it, you have to start today. Realistically, we probably should have started thinking of this a year ago, when we saw what was coming. But it's time to really pivot into action now, and start driving these things home. It's really something where you can start simple and just say, I'm just going to take my 5 most expensive cost codes, and I'm going to lay out a plan of how can I find some savings in those. Or go walk a couple of your specs or model homes, and look at what those inclusions are, and get that mental note of, wow, that's a really nice faucet, or I didn't realize that we did all this LVP flooring through the house. You really need to, you have to start today. If you start tomorrow, you're just further behind your competitors tomorrow than you already are today.
Right. And what's amazing is you already have seen the benefit of taking action on something like this with the builder you worked with, where he made a few, and you called it the low-hanging fruit. It was just reevaluating what they're doing, how they're doing it, and within a couple of days, their velocity tripled. They hadn't sold anything. How long had it been since they'd sold a home?
When we started the process, we were at 9 weeks with no sales.
And they got 7 in the last week?
7 in the last week and a couple days.
Yeah. So it's really important. Make sure you take, I hope you've taken really great notes. Feel free to visit back at our website at the events page and click on webinars so you can revisit this to get more ideas. As always, do you have your contact information that you can throw up there? If you have any questions or want to reach out to Dave directly. Oh, wait, go back. Let me just remind everybody real quickly. Oh, Ben Beard. Okay, I'm curious on that. How did they change all of their homes in process?
So the homes in process is what we talked about a few minutes ago. If the home was already in process and sold, it finished the way that it was specified at the time. They did have, I believe we have a total of 6 specs in the ground. We went back to those specs and changed those inclusions into options, so that house is now starting at the same base price, but it has these options for those things that we ended up removing from the home.
Excellent. I hope that answers your question, Ben. And go back to the page about the Executive Summit, because we only have a few spots left at Executive Summit. So if anybody is interested in joining us, Dave will be there, Ed will be there, Carrie will be there, of course, Chuck and Emma will be there. And we have a bunch of great speakers, but we're going to be talking about challenges fuel success. Over the last few years, we've lost control of a lot of systems, processes, and procedures because everything's been on fire and constantly changing. So we're going to talk about focusing on taking this time to reevaluate our organizations and come out stronger in the end. So if you haven't already registered for the Executive Summit, this is the information for it. You can go to our website on the events page and register for that. There's only a few spots left, so we'd love to see you. Next page. And if you guys have worked with us in the past, you know all of our services. If you aren't using us for rebates, this is another way to save money and reduce costs by submitting your closings to us, and then we'll process your rebates for you. We have a bunch of manufacturers that we're working with, and that's listed on this next page. These are the manufacturers that we work with. And so if you're working with any of these companies, get in touch with us here at Builder Partnerships and we can help you get your rebates for those products. Of course, we have our consulting team. Dave's available for helping out with any of these topics that we talked about today. And we have a bunch of other consultants that work in different specialties, ranging from leadership to governance to production to purchasing, and so forth. So please reach out to us if you have any questions on that, on consulting or coaching. And I think your contact information, oh, here's our seminar schedule. So if you are interested in joining us for any live seminars, we have a seminar coming up in March in Atlanta for managing for profit. And then you can see the rest of our schedule there. And we also offer online classes. We have a negotiating to win class that's going to be on March 14th and 16th. It's a 4-hour virtual class, and we'll do a lot of role playing. It's a great way to hone in on your negotiating skills. And of course, we have our next webinar Wednesday next week. We'll be designing homes to beat high interest rates. And then 2 weeks after that, on March 15th, it'll be after our executive summit, transforming your business, 3 tips to improve profitability today. Excuse me. And I think the last slide is Dave's information. So if you have any questions directly for Dave, you're welcome to email him at daveb@finconsulting.com. And you can always reach out to myself or at, any information at info@finconsulting.com. We have enjoyed every minute with you guys today. I know Dave has had a lot of fun talking about this topic because I think he eats, sleeps, and breathes this topic. And the idea of being able to help you guys save money and reduce your price so you can increase velocity and increase your profitability in your organization is always something that we are proud to be able to help you do. And the impact that it has beyond your organization into your communities and into the families that you serve in your organization and the families you serve in your community, we're proud to be able to help you with those things. So thank you guys again for joining us for Webinar Wednesday. We look forward to seeing you next week and at a future Webinar Wednesdays and any of our live sessions. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.